Hello there. Today, let's talk about one of the most notorious crime lords in Qingdao. Nie Lei. Nie Lei can be considered a legendary figure in the city of Qingdao, China. At the age of 16, he was sentenced to prison for robbery. Later, he was sent to labor reform camps twice for his involvement in gang fights. From an early age, Nie Lei was labeled a criminal. However, instead of feeling ashamed, those years in prison only fueled his ambition to rise above and prove himself. After being released from the labor camp, Nie Lei had nothing. He hustled to make a living, doing everything from selling shoes to setting up small roadside stalls and taking on odd jobs. But unlike other drifters, Nie Lei had a keen eye for business. He quickly spotted an opportunity in real estate, a booming industry in China at the time. As he accumulated immense wealth, his reputation also grew. If he had continued on this path, he might have become an inspiring rags-to-riches success story. However, life often takes unexpected turns. At the peak of his career, Nie Lei stepped onto a darker path. He gathered a large group of vagabonds and formed an underground organization with hundreds of members. Like many crime syndicates, Nie Lei's operations were riddled with illicit deals and violence. He opened numerous casinos, entertainment venues, and organized illegal activities behind the scenes. Not only did he run gaming centers and entertainment hubs, but he also engaged in illegal activities across various industries. Over the years, his organization was responsible for numerous serious incidents, resulting in 2 deaths, 1 person severely injured, and 13 others suffering minor injuries. The number of people attacked by him and his subordinates was beyond count. So, what exactly happened in Nie Lei's life? How did he transform from a street vendor into a real estate tycoon? And how did he end up becoming a notorious crime boss? In the end, what would be his fate? Let's delve deeper into the crime-filled life of Nie Lei. A troubled and rebellious youth, Nie Lei was born in 1967 in Qingdao, Shandong Province, to an intellectual family. Both his parents were well-respected high school teachers, but their dedication to their profession led them to neglect their only son. His mother devoted almost all her time to her students, overlooking her child's emotional needs. Growing up, without much parental affection, Nie Lei became stubborn, independent, and rebellious from a young age. Before finishing high school, Nie Lei dropped out. He spent his days mingling with delinquent youths. Although he initially didn't commit any serious crimes, his constant association with troublemakers tainted his reputation. One day, while wandering the streets, Nie Lei witnessed 2 kids from the Xifang district robbing another child from the Shibei district. The victim had only 3.5 jiao, a small amount of money. Out of kindness, Nie Lei offered to give the child 5 jiao so he could afford a bus ride home, allowing the robbers to keep the rest. However, Nie Lei had no idea that such a minor act would completely change his life. After returning home, the robbed child told his parents what had happened. Being responsible individuals, they refused to let their son be bullied without taking action, so they reported the incident to the police. In reality, this matter had little to do with Nie Lei. If he had explained the situation clearly, it might have ended there. Unfortunately, at the time, China was in the midst of a severe crackdown on crime. Criminal cases were handled under the principle of strict and swift punishment, often denying the accused the right to legal defense. Under such circumstances, Nie Lei had no choice but to accept his fate and was sentenced to 6 years in prison. Being convicted was already a major blow to him. But what was even worse was that after sentencing, Nie Lei was paraded through the streets for public humiliation. For a young teenager, this was a severe attack on his pride. From that moment, resentment began to grow in Nie Lei's heart. After Nie Lei was imprisoned, his parents tirelessly sought justice for their son. They continuously filed appeals. Finally, after 2 years, his sentence was reduced to 6 months in detention. However, less than a year after his release, Nie Lei was arrested twice for gang fights. His parents were so worried that they became physically exhausted. But no matter how heartbroken they were, they couldn't abandon their son. After Nie Lei was released from the labor camp again, his parents tried every possible means to secure him a stable job. However, His criminal record followed him everywhere, and no employer was willing to hire him. From street vendor to crime lord. With no other options, Nie Lei had to find his own way to survive. At that time, a small market on Tianmu Road in Qingdao had just been established. Though it was still modest, it was gaining some recognition. Seeing its potential, Nie Lei decided to set up a shoe stall and build his business from scratch. Thanks to his sharp market sense, his shoe stall thrived. After a few years, he partnered with friends to open a shoe store on Tianmu Road. By then, Nie Lei had accumulated tens of thousands of yuan. With a substantial amount of capital, he began looking for more lucrative business opportunities. In the 1990s, China's real estate market was booming, and Qingdao was no exception. Spotting this golden opportunity, Nie Lei immediately set his sights on the industry. He went on to establish multiple real estate companies. In just a few short years, he completed the capital accumulation process. From an unknown street vendor, he rose to become a prominent real estate mogul. His parents, seeing their son's success, were overjoyed. They believed he had truly changed and left his troubled past behind to embrace a better future. However, they had no idea that behind his glamorous success, Nie Lei had already set foot on a path of no return. Starting in 1990, Nie Lei began building his underground empire by recruiting a large group of vagrants and gradually infiltrating the gambling industry. He established numerous entertainment centers in Qingdao's busiest streets, such as Zhongshan Road and Nanjing Road. Places like Hongqing Entertainment City and Zhengtai Game Center appeared to be ordinary arcade venues, but in reality, they were covert casinos generating nearly 1 billion yuan in illegal profits. Not stopping there, in pursuit of even greater wealth, he expanded his operations into the prostitution industry. Nie Lei and his associates founded New First City nightclub on Hong Kong Central Road, the most prosperous street in Qingdao. This place was once compared to heaven on earth in Beijing. Here he organized a large-scale prostitution network, offering illegal services and turning a blind eye to drug use among customers. Through these operations, within just 3 years, Nie Lei raked in another 50 million yuan. While accumulating illicit wealth, Nie Lei also focused on securing the loyalty of his subordinates to strengthen his influence. He was generous with his men, buying them houses, gifting them cars, and even distributing company shares to those who were exceptionally devoted. This strategy earned him a group of fiercely loyal followers, willing to do anything at his command. To maintain his dominance in Qingdao, Nie Lei's gang not only profited from gambling, prostitution, and drugs, but also stockpiled a vast arsenal of weapons, carrying out numerous acts of violence to intimidate rivals and expand their territory. He and his henchmen frequently used firearms to threaten, injure, and forcefully coerce illegal deals. On July 16, 1999, during the grand opening of Hongqing Entertainment City, 3 strangers brazenly entered the venue to distribute flyers for a competing establishment, Longshan Game Center. This act was nothing short of blatant provocation. Without hesitation, Nie Lei ordered his men to attack them, resulting in 2 severe injuries and 1 fatality. After the incident, to avoid unwanted attention, Nie Lei sought to suppress the matter by purchasing burial land for the deceased, gifting the victim's parents an apartment, and committing to a monthly allowance of 5,000 yuan. With these efforts, the case was quickly silenced, and no one dared to bring it up again. On April 10, 2000, while enjoying himself at Polka Tea House on Yanjia Road in Qingdao, Nie Lei was unexpectedly confronted by a man named Wang. Enraged, he assaulted Wang, leaving him severely injured and hospitalized. Later, Nie Lei offered 250,000 yuan in compensation to ensure Wang would not report the matter to the police. Out of fear for Nie Lei's power and reputation, Wang had no choice but to remain silent. On October 12, 2000, one of Nie Lei's subordinates was attacked. Suspecting that the perpetrator was Li, the director of the Qingdao-based entertainment company Huiguang Paradise, Nie Lei did not hesitate to retaliate. He ordered his men to track Li, and when Li arrived at Qiankan Hot Pot restaurant on Daidong, rode for dinner, Nie Lei and his gang stormed in. They covered Li's head with a sack, brandished firearms to threaten him, and transported him to a hillside east of Ningxia Road. There, Nie Lei and his men brutally tortured him, breaking both his legs. For years, to protect his interests and solidify his position, Nie Lei established a violent faction led by his most trusted subordinates. They systematically orchestrated assaults, public disturbances, and even murders of their adversaries. On one occasion, to assert himself as the undisputed kingpin of Qingdao, Nie Lei backed Ma Chengwen and led over 30 armed men to surround Shunfeng Hotel in broad daylight. At the time, several government officials and military officers were dining inside, making the incident a public spectacle that shocked the entire city. However, everything Nie Lei and his gang had done up to that point was merely the tip of the iceberg. Nie Lei's organization was not a loosely connected gang, but a meticulously structured network with a clear chain of command. The key members were all close friends and relatives, each assigned specific roles and responsibilities. They acted ruthlessly, eliminating anyone who stood in their way. In Nie Lei's eyes, not even the police were worth his concern. On the night of July 25, 2006, a group of Nie Lei's men drove into a residential area and got into a conflict with the neighborhood security guards. At that moment, a patrolling police officer happened to pass by. Seeing the tense situation, he approached to mediate. However, instead of backing down, Nie Lei's men brazenly drew their guns and fired multiple shots at the officer's legs right there on the scene. In the eye. And the matter was settled with financial compensation, and no one was held accountable. By then, Nie Lei's influence in Qingdao was so vast that he had practically become an uncrowned king of the criminal underworld. Nie Lei was not only ruthless in his operations, but also extremely paranoid. When he suspected that his wife was having an affair with a man named Zhou, he immediately ordered his men to kidnap Zhou and take him to a tea house for a warning. But contrary to Nie Lei's expectations, Zhou was undeterred and continued his relationship with Nie Lei's wife. Feeling humiliated, Nie Lei decided to take matters into his own hands. One April day, he commanded his men to force Zhou into a truck. Inside the vehicle, he mercilessly beat Zhou before using a lighter and cigars to burn large scars into the man's face. Not stopping there, in an act of sheer cruelty, he even poured acid directly onto Zhou's groin before leaving him at a construction site to die. For over a decade, Nie Lei and his gang ran rampant across Qingdao, committing more than 40 major crimes. Nearly every serious criminal case in the city had ties to this notorious underworld kingpin. Yet, strangely, police records contained no mention of Nie Lei's crimes. The reason was simple: money and connections. After every crime, Nie Lei paid large sums to silence victims and prevent them from filing reports. If someone did go to the police, he had the right contacts to ensure the case was buried. This strategy allowed him to continue his reign of terror for years without consequence. But no one escapes justice forever. By 2008, Qingdao police had begun taking notice of Nie Lei's syndicate and quietly gathering evidence. However, they still lacked the necessary leverage to take action. Everything changed in March 2010. A violent incident at the Wangjing Hotel became the spark that ignited the downfall of Nie Lei's entire empire. This was not just an internal power struggle, it was a mistake that gave the authorities the perfect opportunity to strike. Around midnight on March 27th, a woman named Chao led 4 girls from the new First City nightclub to the Wangjing Hotel to provide special services. However, the hotel's security guards refused to let them in, triggering a heated argument. The nightclub's assistant manager, a man named Tai, called Nie Lei for instructions on how to handle the situation. But Nie Lei, occupied with other matters, did not answer the phone. Tai then sought help from another of Nie Lei's close associates, a hot-tempered man named Ren. Upon hearing the story, Ren flew into a rage. That very night, he rallied 20 gang members armed with cleavers and clubs and stormed the hotel. They not only assaulted guests, but also rushed to the 3rd floor, breaking into the hotel's nightclub and brutally attacking the club's manager, Sun. Sun suffered severe injuries, including the loss of 2 fingers and deep wounds to his chest, shoulders, and back. For Nie Lei, this was just another routine dispute, easily resolved with a payout. But this time, he made a grave miscalculation. That night, Qingdao was hosting the International Leaning Cup badminton tournament. The city's government was on high alert, determined to maintain Qingdao's image. This was the first major international sporting event held in Qingdao since the 2008 Beijing Olympics and the 11th National Games in 2009. The city had gone to great lengths to prepare, ensuring a smooth and welcoming environment for both domestic and international athletes. Coincidentally, the international athletes were staying at the 5-star Wangjing Holiday Hotel. And in a disastrous turn of events, many of these high-profile guests had witnessed the horrific gang attack firsthand. At such a politically sensitive time, the violence at Wangjing Hotel was no longer just an ordinary brawl. It had become an international incident. The police wasted no time launching a full-scale investigation. This was the tipping point that led to the ultimate dismantling of Nie Lei's criminal empire, which had plagued Qingdao for over a decade. Nie Lei never imagined that a simple altercation would explode into a scandal with global ramifications. Less than an hour after the attack, Qingdao police identified it as their key opportunity to eradicate the gang that had terrorized the city for years. To gather sufficient evidence on the crimes committed by Nie Lei's gang, the Qingdao police department mobilized 360 elite officers to form a special task force. They conducted investigations across 17 major provinces and cities, including Beijing, Shanghai, Tianjin, Hebei, and Fujian. After 3 months of covert operations and meticulous information gathering, the police finally amassed enough evidence on nearly all of the gang's illegal activities and decided to launch an arrest operation. However, Nie Lei had received a tip-off in advance and managed to escape in secret. On June 23, 2010, the Chinese Ministry of Public Security issued a Class B nationwide arrest warrant for Nie Lei. Just 2 months later, he was apprehended. By September of the same year, the police had completely dismantled his criminal organization, arresting more than 130 members of the gang. On March 2, 2012, the Qingdao Intermediate People's Court handed down the highest possible sentence to Nie Lei. He was convicted of multiple charges, including organizing and leading a criminal syndicate, intentional assault, and running prostitution operations, among various other crimes. The court sentenced him to death and confiscated all of his personal assets. After the verdict was announced, Nie Lei fell into despair. That night, he chain-smoked continuously, finishing 5 packs of cigarettes in a single night. He desperately sought ways to evade justice, but in the end, all his efforts were futile. Before the law, no amount of scheming could alter his fate. On September 17, 2013, the Qingdao court carried out the death sentence on Nie Lei. Just before his execution, he clung to his mother, sobbing uncontrollably. Whether he was truly remorseful or merely unwilling to accept his fate, no one could say for certain. But one thing was clear: every mistake comes with a price. Everyone must ultimately take responsibility for their own actions. Nie Lei's story stands as a stark reminder of the principle that one reaps what they sow. No matter how powerful or wealthy, evil cannot remain hidden forever. Justice may be delayed, but it never disappears. Wealth built on crime is nothing more than an illusion, and in the end, everyone must pay for what they have done. Doing the right thing may not bring immediate rewards, but it ensures long-term peace, whereas a life of crime will inevitably lead to a bitter downfall.